Chaos on the campaign trail. Anti-Trump protests turning violent this week as protesters burn signs, taunt police, and smash glass. Now, critics are asking, why is the mainstream media ignoring who's behind many of these protests? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagen McDowell in for Brenda Butner. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Katie Pavlich and Jonathan Hodig. Welcome, everybody. Katie, is the media showing bias in their coverage?
Of course they are. I mean, and the reason they are is because the media is full of progressives, and these organized protests, these professional agitators, are supported by not just far-left groups, but also mainstream progressives. We saw this in the 2008 convention, RNC convention, when these type of protesters claimed they were going to shut down the convention by all means necessary. We then saw them again during the Occupy Wall Street movement, and we've seen them in Ferguson last summer, as a result of what happened there. So these people aren't necessarily just protesting Trump. They've been around for a long time, and they just have a new target this time, and the media is choosing to ignore it.
If people were outside Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders rallies, John Layfield, they would be lambasted as Looney Tunes, conservative, racist, bigots, you name it, you would hear it, right?
Yeah, you would, and this is you got to vilify all of these ignorant protesters that are causing the violence and the mayhem. Look at what they did with the Tea Party. Look at Gabby Gifford when she was shot. They blamed it on the environment created by the far right. I do believe that is media spin. Look, you cannot possibly blame Bernie Sanders for this, not for these idiots that violate crimes, but the rhetoric that he's using, I think certainly hurts this, and a lot of that is not being brought to light. He calls Hillary Clinton racist comments from back 1996. The same for Donald Trump. And you've agitated these people that want to protest peacefully. They're Americans just like us, but then you have these thugs and these idiots that do stupid things. This should be reported and be condemned by the media.
But in terms of, Jonas, what the mainstream media covers, it's always been a double standard. They are all over anything to do with a conservative protest. But if it's related to the left and liberal-funded groups, forget about it.
I don't know. You start burning cars, and the media covers it. I don't think they let their ratings dictate the decisions. I think it's a little slanted, but I remember the World Trade Organization protests were pretty common around the world. They covered that. That's a liberal, far left movement, and they were out of line. No one was taking the sides of the protesters and somehow being anti-globalization, at least in the media. So I don't know if it's as slanted as you're letting on. The other reason is the Occupy Wall Street. I don't remember that getting violent. There's a lot of drum playing going on. I don't remember it getting like this.
There was rape. There was lots of rape. There were cop cars burned. There were businesses destroyed.
Look, all I'm saying is the third piece is, if the Bernie Sanders people were the ones being protested, I just don't think the Bernie Sanders fans are going to be punching back. So I just don't see it would have the level of media, it's hard to say because we don't have an example of the other side.
Actually, Gary B. Smith, that is exactly what happened at that Democratic convention in Nevada. The Bernie Sanders supporters just created utter chaos. They were throwing chairs, sent the chairwoman of the Democratic Party in the state death threats, for Pete's sake. So how much coverage did that get? Not much.
No, and it never will. One interesting fact, you mentioned, Dagen, conservative protests. Yeah, how many times are we really talking about conservative protests that erupt in violence and chair throwing? It's just not that common. I think in general, conservatives welcome discourse. Liberals say they welcome discourse, but they don't. They want to, and I think they're taking their cue from this administration. They want to shut down discussion. They want to shut down argument. And if you disagree with the liberal point of view, you're a Looney Tune or a thug or a criminal. But, Dagen, it all boils down to, as we've kind of alluded to, the mainstream media's bias. I look back in 2008, of the top 100 newspapers in circulation, 80% endorsed Obama. Now, this is in a country that in theory is split 50-50 Republicans, Democrats. Maybe it shifts a few percentage points based on the year, but that's how it is. And yet 80% of the largest newspapers in the country endorsed Obama. What does that say about the bias? It says that anything that Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton raises will be met with hallelujah, and the email scandal's not that bad, and anything on the right now with Trump as the candidate is going to met with, oh my gosh, they're thugs, they're terrible, they're horrible. That's just the way it is, and it's been that way for, unfortunately, quite a while.
Jonathan?
Well, I mean, listen, the mainstream media is liberal, but Dagan, in a free country, the media is the people. And a lot of people out there, frankly, are liberal. And isn't Trump's appeal supposed to be that he brings liberals into the Republican Party, that he's got that crossover appeal? And I'll tell you, although this didn't get a lot of coverage, these recent protests, there has been a hell of a lot of violence at Donald Trump rallies, some of which, at least previously, he has encouraged. So what is it about the message? Because to your point, you didn't see this at Jeb rallies or Ted Cruz rallies or Hillary or really Bernie rallies. So what is it about Trump's message that is bringing out, whether it's planned or not, so much violence?
You're actually making our point, Jonathan, because everybody brings up that one image of the old man hitting that guy at that one Trump rally in North Carolina, and that is the sole, because it was covered so widely by the mainstream media, that is the sole basis for people saying that Trump rallies inside are violent and people are getting beaten up.
Well, that was the sole example of violence at Trump rallies, and maybe I guess that's news to me. I mean, I witnessed, at least in Chicago, quite a bit. So there's something about the message there, in my opinion, whether it's getting covered in the media or not. There's no question the media has liberal slants, but there's something about the message that's bringing out this level of violence in other rallies.
Checking before the egg thing here, like Trump is getting a lot of media coverage from the day this started, and then things happen and they're going to get a lot of coverage because the media is already there. There was a lot of candidates that nobody cared about. The media glams on who the ratings are, and I think ultimately this is driven by ratings, both the covering Trump. You see that. What were we going to say?
No, but Katie, I want to get to the point of, like, even violence that you see outside of a Trump rally that is liberal driven, that is paid for by liberal groups. You have things like a protester yelling at our Fox News reporter, Jonathan Hunt, what do you think about Trump causing all this?
Well, look,
that's the insanity.
Yeah. That is the insanity, and I do think, and I've been one of the few people, trying to at least hold Donald Trump accountable for the things he does say. And when he says that he's willing to pay for the medical bills of people who are going to punch protesters, I think that's an issue. But to your point, Dagan, as I mentioned, these far-left protesters have been protesting for decades, and the media ignores it as something that's more legitimate than the Tea Party movement, which wasn't a violent movement, by the way. And so when it comes to digging, when it comes to digging into the background of who these protesters are, the media never talks about the fact that SEIU is the one organizing a lot of these protests. Never talk about the fact that people are paid by liberal organizations to show up at conservative events to protest. That is never talked about in mainstream media,
Katie,
but they smear conservatives when they go to protest.
Being conservative Republican generally means you like the system as it is. It works for you. You don't want your high tax back. People that protest this goes back for hundreds of years, the system's not working for them, so you can't expect the same level of protesting from, you don't get like people with yacht owners protesting taxes that are going up on the park. It just doesn't happen.
We should distinguish between protesters and rioters then, and violent rioters, because there's a difference between protesting and exercising your First Amendment right, which we all have a right to do, whether you're left or right.
I'm not saying they
right.
get violent.
But what
I'm
we're
just
talking about now, we're talking about violence, and you're basically justifying it right now.
And Gary B., there were 6 police officers injured at that Albuquerque rally outside of the Trump rally. The one that we're talking about didn't get enough coverage. Final word to you.
Well, look, Jonathan made a point which I will disagree with. He said that mainstream media is the people. I don't think that's true. I think the brass at the Washington Post and New York Times are East Coast liberals educated at Ivy League universities, and Harvard University represents me, about as much as Cornell and Penn and all those other liberal institutions. So you got these highfalutin smarty pants up there who think they know better, and they're dictating what we should believe. I just don't. I don't agree in that point.
Yeah,
that's got to be.
Dagan,
Okay.
I don't think that the media leans just left. I think it leans awful. I mean, they just don't cover anything. They'd rather cover sensationalism than cover the real facts. So the media wants to cover a dog chasing a car rather than cover real things that matter.
John,
I think they're awful.
Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Cavuto on Business about